Adobe Creative Cloud plugins and integrations.
Hi there, I'm Arie. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited to talk to you about an extension for After Effects called Templater. Now, with this extension, you can take data stored in a spreadsheet, a file, or an API and pipe it directly into After Effects composition layers. With Templater, you can preview how that data looks directly within the comp viewer inside of AE. And once you're satisfied with how your data looks, you can use Templater to export many variations of your master comp based off of that data. So I'm going to show you a general workflow to introduce you to some basic features in Templater. So let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so what we have here is an animated Instagram post, and a lot of these elements in this composition are dynamic. The text layers, the image layers, they're all connected to data. And what I want to show you is how to use Templater to link After Effects to a data source and then map some of that data to the various layers inside of the After Effects compositions. Over here, what I have is a spreadsheet that's a Google Sheet. And in the first row, we've got items that refer to the layers inside of the After Effects compositions. The rows below the first one are new versions of the dynamic compositions in that After Effects project. So you can kind of consider them as each being a new output. What we're going to do is take this data in the username main, and I want to map it to a layer inside of After Effects. I've already got that set up here, but I'm going to show you how it can be built very quickly. If I go to a composition and create a new comp, I'm going to call this demo. I'm going to go ahead and create a new text layer and name this placeholder. And we're going to go into Templater and make sure that we're linked to that spreadsheet that I just showed you. So here I'm in the Google Spreadsheet Setup dialog. I click on the Instagram project data. Here's the Posts tab, which can be found here. And now that I have selected that specific worksheet inside of the spreadsheet, I'm going to hit Link Worksheet. So now After Effects is connected to that data source. So what I'm going to do is take this layer and I'm going to apply the Data Clay Templater Settings effect to it. I just click on Templater Settings, and then I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer. I'm going to call it username main and hit enter. So inside of the Templater 3 panel, I have something called a transport, and there's a start and a finish. These refer to the rows for the data set that you want Templater to retrieve and process. The start row is 2 and the finish row is 8. That means once I do any previewing, Templater is going to grab these rows of data and bring it into its memory. Let's go back and click the beginning or the start preview, and you can see this is the first item in that row for that particular layer named username main. Now, if I continue in the transport to go advance, you can see that now the data has changed. So the data mapping is definitely there. I can also click this last one to go to the end of that range. And so that last one is row 8, and you can see that we have data clay. The mapping is really about renaming a layer to a column header and then also just applying the Templater Settings effect to that layer. Once those two actions have been performed, you can then preview data so long as Templater is connected to a data source. With footage assets, it's virtually the same. The only thing that you have to make sure of is setting a footage root path here in the Templater panel. So right now I've got this subdirectory as my footage root for this particular project. If I go to the data, you can see that I have these slashes here. These represent subfolder paths relative to this footage path here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer that's just a footage asset. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this one to content main. So I'm going to go ahead and do content main. Now that that's there, I then go to effect and I apply the Templater Settings effect, and my footage root is correct. And this main subfolder contains these images, these assets. So if I start to click advance again, now I have not just the text layer, but also this footage layer is now mapped to the data inside of the Google Sheet. Okay, so now we're going to just kind of back out and take a look at the overall composition here. And if I just traverse through that data set, you can see that all of the elements change. So I keep going forward And you can see that Templator is bringing in assets and replacing assets every time a new preview comes up. That's effectively how you can link data to After Effects via Templator. Once you have the data linked, the next task is to really figure out how to get outputs. And I can easily achieve that with something called spot checking. Now, spot checking allows you to determine a frame inside of your dynamic composition that you want exported as still images so that you can quickly render and preview how that data looks inside of the composition. So let me show you what I'm talking about. This frame right here is pretty important. It shows us the image, it shows us all the dynamic text layers, and I just want to see what this frame looks like for any given row inside of my data. So I'm going to go ahead and drag out a marker in the composition and then give this a comment of spread and click OK. Then I'm going to get rid of these two because I don't want to spot check these frames. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is click spot check, and we're going to see Templator grab the data in rows 2 through 8 as specified in the transport. And if I open up the destination folder, we're going to see still images of each row at that marker, the spread marker. So in this way, it speeds up the quality assurance process of your data inside of your creative. So I open this up, you can see that's the still image at the spread marker for row 2. This is row 3, row 4, row 5, or 6, or 7, row 8. So that's spot checking. Now, rendering isn't that much different. Basically, you go back into Templator here, and instead of hitting spot check, you would hit render. I'm going to open up the Finder here, and what we're going to see is Templator instructing After Effects to export movie files to the destination specified here in Templator's main panel. In this way, we can go through the entire rendering process. Now, these renders respect the settings set here for the render settings template and the output module. These can be set up inside of After Effects' main menu, or you can load the ones that we provide when you install Templator. Take a look at our knowledge base for details on how to load Data Clay render settings templates and output modules. So it's going through all the rows 2 through 8. Let's wait and see it run its course. So if I open up this, you can see this is just that work area as specified by the render settings template inside of Templator's main panel. This is the next video here, and so on and so forth. So spot checking allows you to really quickly get through your data to see how it does appear inside of your creative composition. And then the rendering is actually when you want to create the final outputs for distribution or further processing by another tool. All right, so that is rendering. Replication inside of Templator is not much different, but basically what it does is it allows you to take your choice composition and replicate it with the merged data that Templator has retrieved. So just click on replicate, and Templator effectively does the data merge in the same way that it would do in the spot check or the render, but instead of outputting a movie file or a still image, it outputs another After Effects project file. Those After Effects project files have the data that Templator has retrieved injected into its layers. So you could use something like the AE render command line to render out the individual project files here that Templator is making. And in this way, you don't have to wait for After Effects to render out, and you can use a separate application such as Adobe Media Encoder to watch for new AEP files in a folder, and it would pick it up and render them out to H.264, for example. So now that I've shown you Templator's main output tasks, I'm going to show you how you can get Templator to kick off a new customized render when data changes in the connected data source. To do that, we use something called the Templator bot. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just click on Enable Bot here. And what that does is it makes Templator monitor its connected data source for the render status value of any given row. For example, if I wanted to render out this 5th row, the sports one, instead of setting this to done, I can set this to ready, and Templator will note the render status property or column header. And now you can see that it's processing this. So if I went back to After Effects, you can see it's actually doing the reversioning and then rendering it out to disk. In this way, you can control and create new video just by manipulating data and not having to worry about the After Effects application. So if I go into here, for example, instead of advisor medical, I'll call this one medical knowledge, click enter, and then set this to ready. Templater bot is going to pick up that. You can see it's already changing the render status value. But when we go here, you can see that that data is now what I just entered in. So it's really powerful because it becomes a question of, well, how do you get data into your data source that Templater is connected to? And that's where I want to introduce you to something that we call Q. So what we're going to do is bring up the Q dashboard. Now, this is just a web app that allows you to manage your Q data, and this data can be piped right into Templater. But each row here is what we call a job, and we call it a job because it's got data that Templater will process into output. In the actions column, if I click on the edit icon here, we can see that this job has a series of key value pairs. Now, the keys in white refer to various layers inside of the dynamic composition in After Effects, and then the orange data refers to the values of those layers. So you can think of the property keys as column headers in a spreadsheet, and the orange data as the values that you might see in a cell in a spreadsheet. A collection of jobs is something that we call a campaign. So what I want to show you is how we can get all the jobs connected to Templater. So let's take a look. If we slide back on over to Templater, inside of the Templater panel, we can see that there is this Q button here. This opens up a new dialog when I click it, and it allows me to sign in and authorize Templater to access my Q data. Once it's authorized, a list of campaigns will show up here in this portion of the dialog. And in this case, I want to connect the Instagram ad that I've been showing you directly to Templater, so I click on this Insta ad. Now, if we look over here, we can see the name of the campaign is in fact Insta ad. And if we just go back here, we can see that these are all of the campaigns in my account. So we're going to bring this back up. And so once we select it here, we're going to click on Link Campaign. So now Templater has all of that campaign data linked to it, and we're going to see how that data looks inside of the compositions. So what we're going to do is advance to the spread marker here and iterate through the data that Templater is retrieving when I use the transport. Click the beginning or the first job, and we can see that it certainly has changed. And if I advance, it's got the second one, and so on and so forth. Here's the third one. Now, you'll notice that in the transport, there is no start and finish field, and that's because with an API, there's no such thing as an ordinal position for any given job. So what we've done is inside of the transport, we have this magnifying glass icon, which brings up the job selection setup dialog, and it allows you to effectively filter down for specific jobs when Templater retrieves them. So for example, I could filter down for a specific ID. This ID comes from the ID here in the dashboard for any given job. So if I wanted to be sure that I wanted the video output 7, I could just go in here, find the ID, and copy it into memory, go back into AE, and just paste it into here, and make sure that, of course, it doesn't have the quotes. And then when I open up the Q inspector, it's just going to show me that one job. And that means that if I have this filter on, then Templater will only be able to focus on this particular job. And sometimes that's good for when you're building out your data and you just want to play with the data quickly to see how the data looks in the composition. So let me give you an example. If I go ahead and click save and then I hit reload, it's going to bring in that particular job data that is in the filter because it's only retrieving a singular job. What's nice though is that because I know it's focused on this job, I can go into the data here and change this LOL to wow, and then click on save on the job and then reload, and this is going to say wow here. So sometimes the filtering is really great for when you're just building your template and you just want to see what data looks like as you play with the data rather than having to manage new jobs. Now that we've seen how data maps between Q and Templater, let's go ahead and see how bot works. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that ID and click on save. Then I'm going to go ahead and hop on over to our browser for the Q dash, and I'm going to sort the output column in ascending order. So we've got video output 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is mark some of these, not all of them, to render status. Instead of done, we're going to set them to ready. So I'm just going to do this one, and that one. So if I click this, I can go to modify selected. I can say set the render status to ready and click submit. And we can see that these rows have been set to ready. Back inside of AE, what I'm going to go ahead and do is make sure I've got my destination here, and I'm going to delete this stuff. And let's go ahead and see what bot is set to do. It's set to render according to the bot settings. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is enable the bot. And if we go back to the dashboard, we should see this change from ready to queued and then to processing. And so there it goes. So now it's working on this video output 2, and we've got the video output 2 here. Here's the advisor medical. It's going to run through that render. If we go back here, this should change from queued to processing. And there we go for video output 5. We can see that video output 5 is here. And then we can see that the last one will be processed. So there you go. And here's the last one in that group of ready jobs. What we're going to do now is leave the bot on, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to get data into your After Effects compositions from any app. So what I want to do is swipe over to a web form that I built with a service called Typeform. Now, Typeform is one of many different vendors for allowing users to create web forms in a point-and-click manner. There is absolutely no coding involved to create a web form with the Typeform service. What I have here is an Instagram username question, and it says enter in a name, and I'm just going to put in the dude, and we're going to click on OK. And the dude is in Los Angeles, California, and we're going to click OK there. And luckily we have the dude, Jeff Bridges himself, right here. So we're going to use that as the avatar. Click OK. And then we're going to upload an image that will be in that main part of the Instagram post. And so for that one, we're going to bring in Walter and the dude together. So click open for that and then hit submit. Now what we're going to do is go over here to our queue campaigns. I'm going to hit reload, and we should see that entry end up as queue data. And in fact, it is already processing. It's got data here. And so if I go back into AE, there you go. There's the dude from Los Angeles, California. And then we have the Instagram post that I uploaded. Now, the way that we get the data from the web form into queue is via something called Zapier, which is a no-code way to automate data workflows. Let me show you an example. Over here is what we call a zap. And every time a new entry in a type form gets entered, what's going to happen is that data is going to dump into a DataClay queue campaign. And in particular, it's going to enter into the Insta ad campaign, and it's going to send along a lot of data that's coming in from that particular web form. So once the data is inside of the queue dashboard, Templator can pick it up without issue. So let's try it again. And here I'm going to go ahead and call this one Dr. Gonzo, hit enter. Dr. Gonzo is going to be in San Francisco, California. And click on this, and we're going to choose Benicio del Toro as the avatar here. Click open, click OK, and we're going to choose the photo, one of the photos from Fear and Loathing. How about that one right there? Click open. That's for the main post. Click submit. And now if we just go over to After Effects, we should see that come in almost immediately. So it's a really powerful way to get data to enter into queue. And once it's in queue, you can be guaranteed that Templator will be able to read and process it. Now, if you're a developer, you can certainly bring your own skills to write your own app that interfaces with Queue using its API endpoints. All of that information is documented online. You can visit this site and you can get the rundown on each endpoint. For example, this one is how to create a new job. You would submit a post request to this URL and then submit along this payload data. So in order to integrate your own app, if you go into the Queue dashboard and you go into the account page, then you can see this API key. You would have to copy this and use it in the requests, for example, here as a header. That's how you can build your own app using Queue's endpoints. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is one more to say goodbye, and we're going to go ahead and type in Wooderson here. Wooderson is from Austin, Texas, and we're gonna grab a photo of the one and only Matthew McConaughey, and we're going to click open, upload this photo for his avatar, and then click here, find that dazed and confused. There's Wooderson, click open, and then we're going to click on submit. So we're going to go back into our AE, and this should pick it up, swap out all of the content that needs to be swapped. And in the immortal words of Wooderson, all right, all right, all right. Indeed it is. What I'm going to show you now is what you can do with the output that Templator generates. I'm going to bring up the Frame.io dashboard for DataClay's account right here. And what I've got is a zap that essentially watches queues data. And if a job is updated, it looks for that file in my Google Drive. And if it's there, it sends that file to Frame.io. It's pretty cool. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go to the dashboard right here and do this one, and this one. We're going to set the render status to ready, submit, and just make sure that bot is reading that ready data and turning them into videos. And there's the first one right there. So let's wait until it does its thing. And this is the Sportical one that we have in our mock data. And now what we're going to go ahead and do is just go over to the Frame.io dashboard and watch to see if that asset that was just generated gets populated here in our Templator output integration. So we can see this first video got uploaded, the second video got uploaded, and there is the third one right there that got generated. So that's just one example of how you can use Q to distribute your output to Frame.io or another video distribution platform. Okay, I know that was a lot of info. Thanks for hanging in there and taking a look at our software. If you have any questions, you can use our support channels at dataclay.com to reach us so that we can help you accomplish your goals. Until next time, I'm Arie Stavchansky, and happy rendering. Take care.